Susan Glasser is editor of Politico magazine and host of the Global Politico podcast. Joins me now from the Politico newsroom there in Arlington, Virginia. And Susan, again, as we look at those remarks from Secretary Kelly, reports suggested that he was among those irritated that he had not been contacted in what he felt to be a proper amount of time as this executive order was rolled out a couple of weeks ago. Then as we look at those remarks, is that the secretary essentially falling on a sword here?
Well, it does seem striking, right, that the first guy who has to go up on the Hill to defend the policy is the guy who was reported to have concerns about what exactly was in the executive order, right? It's not someone from the White House there. You'll note it's Homeland Security. So I think that's striking. In general, the Trump administration is off to the kind of start where you wonder how much support they want from people on Capitol Hill and in the agencies when they're not going out of their way to consult with them.
The court decision then later today by the Ninth Circuit, not just legally as it regards the order itself, but politically, what's at stake here?
Well, look, I mean, you don't have to buy into hyperbole to think that this is an extraordinary early clash of our separate branches of government. In a presidency, it's literally unprecedented that you could already have such a constitutional conflict brewing between the executive branch and the judicial branch. You have the president already undermining the judiciary with his public complaints about federal judges who ruled against him on his executive order. Now you have the first appeals court, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, that's going to be hearing this case already today. So, again, we don't know exactly what will come out of it, but you can say without any exaggeration that this is already the earliest clash of constitutional powers that we've had in a presidency, a modern presidency.
Walking hand in hand with it, then, is the president's verifiably false claim yesterday about the media underreporting terror attacks. It was something he was, in fact, asked about earlier today. I want to get a brief look and listen and get your thoughts on the other side.
I happen to know how dishonest the media is. I happen to know that stories about me that should be good or bad, I don't mind a bad story if it's true, but I don't like bad stories. Stories that should be a positive story, when they make them totally negative, I understand the total dishonesty of the media better than anybody. And I let people know it. I mean, the media is a very, very dishonest arm, and we'll see what happens. Not everybody, and I have to say that. I always preface it by saying, not everybody. But there's tremendous dishonesty, pure outright dishonesty from the media.
Again, that was the president just moments ago. As it regards then what was said about the underreporting of terror attacks, Susan, I've seen one theory be that in discussing what, again, is a verifiably false claim, it does mean, though, that the terror itself is discussed, which then would seem to stoke the fire for the need for some sort of travel ban. I mean, if nothing else, what does the president have to gain here?
Look, this is very, very cynical positioning by President Trump. He is out to undermine institutions, whether it's the institution of the independent press or it's the institution of the independent judiciary. That's been very clear cut. It's been very strategic on his part. It's been done over and over again. A lie is a lie. I'm a believer that it is our role as independent journalists, not in any partisan way, but just simply as journalists, to call someone out when they don't tell the truth, and especially when they don't tell the truth as a systematic campaign of intimidation and undermining. And that's, I believe, what is going on here today. We've
seen also some congressional Republicans be more critical of the president over the past 48 hours, to be sure. As it then impacts what perhaps the executive and legislative branches hope to do in the future as it regards health care, as it regards tax reform, how precarious is what appears to be a growing rift here?
Well, that's a very interesting question, right? Like, from the very beginning, it's been clear that Donald Trump was coming into Washington not really as a Republican president, but almost as a third party of sorts. The Republican establishment was more or less unified against him in a way we haven't seen a party so torn so publicly for so long as we did in 2016. And I think that, so there's Democrats, there's Republicans, and then there's sort of Donald Trump Republicans. And that has always meant, I think, that there was a high danger that congressional Republicans would desert the president at the first sign of trouble, and especially if his numbers were cratering. And I think that that's going to be a risk for Trump throughout his presidency.
He also began rolling back some timelines during the interview in the pregame show of the Super Bowl on Sunday, speaking specifically about the Affordable Care Act. He said that a replacement could come actually sometime next year. And the timeline is something that Speaker Paul Ryan, among others, did weigh in on. In fact, earlier today on Capitol Hill. I want to take a look and listen at that and get your thoughts.
The legislating is going to be done this year. We are going to be done legislating with respect to health care and Obamacare this year. The question is, how long does it take to implement the full replacement of Obamacare? And that's why, honestly, we got to get Tom Price over at HHS, Seema Verma confirmed at CMS, so they can get to work with replacing this collapsing law.
Again, certainly seems like a different answer than the one we heard from the president on Sunday.
Well, look, in a way, actually, that is to the extent maybe hopeful is a little overstating it, but the somewhat hopeful perspective of those who take a long view of Washington. I went to interview former Secretary of State Jim Baker the other day for the launch of our global Politico podcast. And, that was basically his take. It's not optimism per se, but it's a sense that, Washington still operates by the rules that Washington operates by, and that President Trump won't be the first politician to come to town determined to blow everything up and discover that there are constraints built within the system.
Then quickly, is there, you mentioned, and it is a great listen, that podcast with James Baker. It seems that you also focused on fear as a powerful motivator, but certainly, as he pointed out, not a preferred state of existence.
Well, that's exactly right. And in the end, people want something to be for and not something merely to be against, especially when you're in a leadership role. And I think the question that Baker had, and that a lot of us have, right, is that Trump has bragged about his role as a deal maker. He's bragged about his business record of success in making deals. So far, in the first few weeks, we haven't seen him reach out to those with whom he might need to make deals yet, whether they're on Capitol Hill, even in his own party, or in foreign countries like Mexico or even Australia, for goodness sakes, where, again, generally you need to be on speaking terms with people in order to make a deal with them, right? So we haven't seen a lot of Trump the deal maker yet.
And I will say, again, the idea of the power centers in the White House at current, there's a lot there. It's the Global Politico podcast. It is not to be missed. Susan Glasser, very much appreciate the time and insight today.
Thank you.